Okay, so for this deep dive, we are taking well, an extreme detour, really setting aside the usual analysis, the data charts. Our sources today are different. They're four raw, uh, intensely personal accounts, stories from people who survived moments where just absolute terror shattered their everyday lives. These aren't theories or, abstract ideas. These are case studies in vulnerability, immediate and overwhelming. Our goal here is to really understand the psychological impact, the warnings hidden in these shocking stories. They show us just how easily that feeling of safety, our daily routine, can be, well, just an illusion. We'll start with a story that perfectly highlights this idea of a threat living right alongside you, almost invisible. The narrator was just a child, 10 years old, back in the early 90s, living in a big, comfortable house, good neighborhood, seems safe, right? But despite that, the child had severe insomnia. They shared a room with their baby sister, who was less than 6 months old. And night after night, being awake like that, they noticed something strange, a pattern. When the baby cried, this large shadow, the back of a big man, would appear, leaning over the crib. The child thought it was their father. So, they'd disturb it, and the man would quiet the baby and just leave, without a single word. It became this bizarre, silent routine, almost normalized by exhaustion and maybe just a child's acceptance of the strange. But that sense of normalcy is shattered one night. The child was finally drifting off to sleep, and they felt these rough, cold hands, just briefly, graze their cheek. They were too tired, or maybe too scared, paralyzed by how strange it felt, to open their eyes. But that feeling, it lingered. That was the moment the shadow became real, tactile.
Right there. That's significant. We often see this pattern, sometimes called nesting in criminal psychology, though maybe that term doesn't fully capture the horror. The silence, the physical closeness, leaning over the crib, the touch suggests a really severe escalation, more than just watching. It's a feeling of, deep entitlement over that space and the people in it. And that entitlement, it exploded into violence the day the mother and child came home early, unexpectedly. The mother opened the door, looked up the stairs, and she saw him, just standing there, holding a bag of bread and a pair of her underwear. The confrontation was instant. The mother just screamed, "Who the fuck are you?" demanding to know. The man stopped, turned slowly, and gave what the narrator remembers as this deliberate, awful, toothy grin. That's when she saw it. The dark shape of a gun in his pocket, undeniable. Her reaction was pure instinct. Shoved the baby's car seat into the older child's arms, pushed them both outside, slammed the door shut, locking herself inside with him. Incredible presence of mind from the mother. And the child's reaction, too, grabbing the baby, running straight to the neighbors, screaming for 911. That was absolutely life-saving. But the police search afterwards, it revealed just how deep this man's delusion, his invasion, really was.
Exactly. They lived near a police station, so help was there almost instantly. But the sirens alerted him. He pointed the gun at the mother's head, then bolted out the back. The police searched everywhere, eventually the unused attic. And what they found was just horrifying confirmation. Blankets, piles of empty wrappers, thread, chips, peanut butter, candy. Clear signs he'd been living there a long time. And finding more of the mother's underwear up there, it just confirmed this complete, utter violation. It went way beyond just squatting. But the story doesn't end there. And this part is truly terrifying. 4 years later, the narrator's in high school, freshman year, taking a shortcut home through a field. And that old feeling, that chilling sense of being watched, it came back. Strong. They turned around and saw him again.
4 years later, that just speaks volumes about the trauma, doesn't it? How deeply it embeds itself.
Absolutely. The narrator ran, threw their backpack over a big fence, desperately trying to climb after it to get away. But before they could get over, they felt those same rough hands grab their jeans, pull them down. He leaned over them, same grin, and said this chilling thing, "You're as beautiful as your mother." He clamped his hand over their mouth to stop the screams. But just then, luckily, a local football player cutting through the field saw what was happening. He tackled the man, broke his nose. This time, he was caught. But the narrator mentioned years of therapy afterwards, thinking about how this horror had been allowed to grow right above them.
And that reflection is key psychologically. That feeling the narrator had, it could have easily been avoided if only we had checked the attic. It's this burden of responsibility victims often carry, Even though the guilt belongs entirely to the perpetrator, it's a secondary trauma from the security failure itself.
That violation of your home, your safest space, it's profound. Our next story shifts, though. It's a different kind of horror. A quiet, shocking discovery found in the middle of the normal workday.
Yes, this moves from that deliberate predatory invasion to the quiet tragedy of isolation and delayed discovery.
So this narrator worked as a key holder for a condo building. Their job involved letting repair people into units. It was the last unit of the day. They knocked. No answer. Standard procedure. They used the key. The second the door opened, they were hit by this overwhelming foul smell. At first, I tried to rationalize it, maybe just rotten eggs, bad garbage. Inside, things felt off. Signs of life just suddenly stopped. Moldy bread on the counter. A cake on the stove that looked, as they put it, sweaty. The worst discovery was in the bedroom. The narrator looked in and saw what looked like a woman, hunched over in bed, almost like a strange yoga pose, contorted. Thinking they had walked in on someone sleeping or meditating, the narrator reflexively apologized. "Sorry, ma'am, I didn't know you were home." Just mumbled it out of embarrassment, but there was silence. And then one of the AC repairmen with them stepped closer, looked hard, and said it. The horrifying truth. "Ma'am, she's fucking dead, dude."
And when dealing with decomposition, especially over time or in heat, the visual cues can be very misleading. Bloating, discoloration, it can drastically alter appearance. The police later correcting the initial impression, specifying she was a young, Caucasian blonde woman, really highlights how reality in these situations can be so different from that first shocking glance. The decomposition process is profound.
And the timeline they discovered was just devastating. The police confirmed her identity, young woman, her last diary entry, 10 days earlier. Just imagine, 10 days, lying there in that quiet condo, unnoticed, alone.
The psychological toll of making a discovery like that, it's immense. It's something first responders deal with, but it's rarely discussed more widely. For this narrator, the memory became tied to specific senses. That permanent aversion to the smell of mold or decay, that's somewhat common. But the specific detail about wonton soup, the first thing they ate hours after finding the body, and now they can't stomach it. It shows how trauma just involuntarily maps itself onto completely ordinary parts of life.
Yeah, really shows the invisible scars. Okay, our third account. This takes us somewhere completely different. From that quiet tragedy to high-stakes terror. Born from a reckless, childish prank, this story is from Israel, set in a poor, high-crime area, what the narrator calls the ghetto. It involves 4 friends, all around 10 years old, Ron, Andre, Eli, and the narrator. They'd made this hangout, Azula, in the ruins of an old bunker roof on a steep hill, their secret spot. One day, they were skipping school, hanging out there. And Andre, maybe the most naive of the group, found a business card for an escort service. He decided it would be funny to prank call them on speakerphone, pretending to be a big boy asking for service. The man who answered sounded, well, creepy, according to the narrator, but he agreed to meet. And Andre incredibly foolishly gave him the exact address of their hidden, remote Zula.
That's just textbook opportunism recognizing vulnerability. What started as a stupid joke immediately signaled an isolated potential target to the men on the other end. They heard kids' remote location.
About an hour later, a black van pulled up near the field below their Zula. 2 men got out, started walking up the steep, grassy hill towards them. Then one of them yelled up, "Big boy, I need to ask you something." That was it. The boys didn't need to hear anymore. They just ran. Scrambling up that steep hill, Eli fell hard. Broke something narrator wasn't sure if it was his knee or arm, but he didn't make a sound. The others, just pure paralyzing terror. Flight instinct took over completely. They were too scared to stop. They just kept running. Left Eli there, found a concrete shelter nearby and hid inside.
You see the raw panic there. It's not about morality at that moment. It's pure survival instinct overriding everything else, even friendship. Utterly terrifying for children.
The moment of absolute dread, though. When the heavy metal door of their shelter creaked open, and one of the men was standing there, his voice cold, disturbing. "We just want to talk. We came all this way for you." Luckily, their screams attracted a couple walking their dogs nearby, big German shepherds. The couple started yelling, threatened to call the police, threatened to let the dogs loose. It scared the men off just for a moment, gave them a chance. Thinking they were safe, the boys crept out, heading back towards their neighborhood. But then they saw it, the black van. Circling back, it spotted them. They bolted toward the long set of concrete stairs nearby. The van screeched to a halt at the bottom. One man jumped out, started running, galloping up the stairs after them, and he was yelling these awful things at Andre, things like, "You have such a pretty rear end, it's going to be mine." Just horrific. They weren't fast enough. He caught Andre on the staircase, grabbed him. Andre let out this scream the narrator described as ear-popping, just sheer terror. And in that moment, the narrator, fueled by what they called accidental courage, just picked up a loose rock from the stairs and threw it. Hard. Hit the man right on the head. He let go of Andre, stunned. Andre ran. But the man's focus shifted instantly. He grabbed the narrator by the hair, started dragging them back down towards the van. They were saved only because Andre's screams had been so loud they alerted the narrator's older brothers nearby. They came running, one of them wielding a metal pipe. They caught up to the men and just brutally beat them, severely injured them. But then, incredibly, they let them go. didn't call the police.
And that detail, letting them go after the beating, it speaks volumes about the context, doesn't it? The deep distrust of the police response in that neighborhood, the feeling that immediate violent self-protection is the only reliable option.
Exactly. The aftermath tells the rest of that story. Andre needed psychological treatment, understandably. Eli got a cast for his broken arm from the fall. And the narrator, who arguably saved Andre, they got the ass-whipping of my life from their parents. The police apparently never even followed up on the business card Andre had found, a complete lack of institutional follow-through. Okay, we close this deep dive with one final account. It's brief, but incredibly visceral. It comes from a firefighter EMT, and it shows how extreme conditions can just strip away everything.
This one is about the devastating combination of isolation and environment, the finality of it.
The scene, mid-July, Arizona. Temperatures hitting 105, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Brutal heat. The crew gets a call, a welfare check. Foul odor reported coming from a van where a middle-aged man was known to live. No one had seen him for about 2 weeks. Now, the crew, they know what this likely means. They prepare themselves. But the narrator said nothing truly prepared them for opening that van door. First, a cloud of flies. So thick they described it as opaque. Just flew out in their faces. Then immediately, the stench. Death, magnified exponentially by that relentless baking heat inside the metal van. The man had been dead in there for at least 2 weeks, essentially cooked in that van. But the final detail, the one the narrator admitted, just stays with you. It was the clear evidence that his cats, who were also in the van, had survived those 2 weeks. They survived by consuming the fleshier parts of his body.
A profoundly tragic and deeply disturbing end. It illustrates that total breakdown. Life, dignity, everything erased by extreme heat and isolation.
So these 4 accounts, the intruder nesting quietly in the attic, the unnoticed body in the condo, the terrifying chase born from a prank, the devastating heat in that Arizona van. These aren't just stories. They're true snapshots, raw data points showing the chaos that can just erupt when vigilance slips or when vulnerability is found and exploited.
They really force you to confront it, don't they? Not the sensationalism, but the sheer possibility of disaster striking in the most mundane places. If you look for a thread connecting them, it might be the failure of assumed safety, trust in your home, trust in your neighbor seeing something, trust in the normal rhythm of life protecting you. That trust can be fragile.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, that understanding danger isn't just about the bad guys. It's about understanding your environment, your routines, and actual limits of your perceived safety.
So maybe a final thought for you to take away from this. Given what these accounts show us how easily basic safety nets can fail, what specific things, what assumptions are you relying on right now to define safe in your own daily life? Are they truly reliable?
Thank you for joining us for this particularly intense deep dive into these sources. We know these accounts are difficult, but we hope processing them offers some insight into human vulnerability. If these kinds of terrifying true stories resonate with you, please consider giving a like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Horror Docs. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe.